Entering the Mayo Experience.
Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Mayo Experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, the final rankings update before we get into week one. Week one, almost here, by the way. So we are going to go through every news item, every training camp battle, every rankings adjustment that we have if you're still doing your drafts. I'll be back Monday morning with my week one rankings, Tuesday evening, week one spread picks, Thursday or Wednesday. Everything moves up a day. Wednesday, DraftKings picks and preview with Drew Dinkmeyer and Mike Leone of DailyRoto.com. And to actually speak to that, I did a big giveaway on the weekend with those two guys, and you can go back and check out that show. Chock full of good information with the Daily Roto guys, but I'm giving away a DR NFL package worth $130 to everyone who entered the draw, and the winner of the year-long membership to DailyRoto.com is Pete Eastman at Peter Man East on Twitter. I'll be in contact with you. Congratulations, you friend. Get a soccer clap. If you're trying to jump to any specific news item in general, hit the description of the show. You can just jump right to it. If there's one player in particular you want to hear about, Jake Ciely and I from The Athletic will be breaking everything down. But I have other winners, and I have another giveaway to do. So 3 winners of the 20 DK dollars from that draw from the previous football shows. We have Lexi Dog 17, Thomas Mr. 10, and Win Ego. You guys all won 20 DK bucks. Your accounts have already been credited, so congrats to that. But the big thing, I have one more giveaway to do, and I'll be giving away 2 of these. Plus, everyone should just go sign up for it anyway. GupsCorner.com is putting on the Super 7 spread contest this season. Once again, it's $100 to enter. I'm already entered into it. Feinberg's into it. Cust is into it. Paul Shag is going to be into it. It's going to be great, but I'm going to give away a free entry. So here's what you do. Go down to the comment section after giving the episode a like. So give the episode a like and leave me your favorite week one spread. That is at least your favorite spread on like which side that you want to be on. Or the other way to do it is on Twitter or Facebook. Any football content that you see between now and next Monday, give it a retweet and then tweet back at me with the hashtag Super71. Hashtag Super71 on Twitter and Facebook after sharing that around. No quote tweeting, just retweeting, and you'll be good, all right? So giveaways for everyone. Congrats again to Pete Eastman and the 20 DK dollar winners. Enough of that. Let's get into the news. Jake Ciely is here from The Athletic. Like I mentioned, he'll be back next Monday, too, to break down the week one rankings. What's going on? You fired up for football yet? Because I'm like jittery. I'm so excited.
I really am, honestly. I have 3 more drafts. I'm in the middle of 2 right now, another one tonight, and it's like everything's culminating with next week. It's finally here. Sidebar, real quick, on the Handcuffs thing, did you happen to see that he actually got a mention from the Rockies?
Yeah, so he said he gave up on the Phillies, now he's picking the Rockies to win the NL. The Rockies tweeted back at him, not knowing what's going on, like give him a thumbs up, and then people informed the Rockies that this is not a side you want to be on. Now they're terrified.
I know they said, is there any way to fix it?
There isn't. You need him to abandon the pick. Then they'll be great.
Oh, that's awesome though. That's awesome that the Rockies got a mention for Handcuffs out there.
Yeah, so if anyone does want to pick up on where we've been at, the AFC and NFC win total shows are still out. You can go hit those on YouTube or on the podcast. Plus, like I mentioned, that DraftKings NFL breakdown with Drew and Mike is posted video version. I would recommend the video version because there's a lot of visuals walking you through tools and how to research and really get your lineups right for DraftKings. It's a very worthy 58 minutes to go watch. Probably the most important one you can do for your season. Because listen to my picks. Listen to Jake's picks, pretty good. My picks, pretty terrible. But let's get into this. We got some big news right off the hop. Sam Darnold is going to be the week one starter for the New York Jets after Teddy Bridgewater was shipped off for a 3rd-round pick to the Saints. What do you make of Darnold? Would you draft him in a 12-team? Like, when would he become draftable? I guess is the better question. Not?
He becomes draftable in super flex and 2 quarterback, and that's how I've been treating the entire time. Because earlier, to start this whole process, I said the over/under for starting quarterbacks rookie-wise were going to be 1.5, because I honestly thought that Josh Allen and Sam Darnold were locks to start week one. The bigger question was whether or not Baker Mayfield was going to force the hand of the Browns, but now it looks like we're probably getting 2 and 2. And then obviously we all knew Lamar Jackson would be a long wait, and Josh Rosen just needs an injury in front of him. But all that being said, Sam Darnold makes a ton of sense. The Josh Allen, as much as he looks miserable, he still makes the most sense for the Bills to move forward. But speaking specifically of Darnold, the turnovers are the issue. The turnovers are why that you don't really want him in fantasy, because it's not the fact that he can't put up yards, that he doesn't have talent on these teams, because he has talent. He has talented wide receivers. He has a pretty good backfield, even without Elijah McGuire. So he has weapons, and he will put up numbers. But the entire problem with Sam Darnold is he holds the ball in a weird spot, which causes fumbles. Like, look at Eli Manning, gets the ball swatted out of his hands a lot when he's not looking, when he's got it tucked to the side. That's an issue. And he's also aggressive and makes mistakes so far with interceptions. So you're going to get somebody that if he plays all 16 games, throws for around 3,800 yards and 22, 23 touchdowns, he's probably coming with like 18 or 19 turnovers. And that's the downside. And that's why you only want him in a super flex or 2-quarterback league.
Yeah, a nice DraftKings spot play at a cheap price in the right spot, like if he's taking on like Miami or the Bills or something like that.
The Chiefs defense.
Or the Chiefs defense, exactly, something like that. But yeah, it's a hard pass for me too. How do you think this impacts the receiving game? Like, what does this do to Robbie Anderson? What does this do to Quincy Enunwa? What does this do to Jermaine Kearse? Like, Robbie Anderson was really the only one who was being drafted anyway as like a fringy wide receiver 3. I think this hurts him as opposed to Josh McCown playing, because those two had such a good rapport, but maybe he builds a new rapport with Robbie Anderson. Everything is fine.
I actually think it's offset. I think the rapport lost, it's a good point, but I think the aggressiveness of Darnold is going to offset like the fact of how good the rapport was. So maybe he'll see a better volume and maybe a deeper ADOT and all that type of stuff, but the targets won't be as on point as they would have been from Josh McCown. So I'm not that really worried about Robbie Anderson. I'm more interested to see what turns out after this. That's the question is, and I don't really have that answer for you right now. And I wish I did. I could speculate, but we don't really have a very big sample to say this is who Darnold likes the second most. Like, Robbie Anderson should be the number one as long as he's on the field and whatever suspension may or may not be coming. After that, I mean, we've seen a little bit of Terrell Pryor again. We don't know if it's Pryor, if it's Kearse, or if it's a new one. Like, who is going to be there? A new one missed some time when he was hurt too. So there's not even a telltale factor of this is who the Jets are specifically always using. Like, let's take the Jaguars. Even before the Marquise Lee injury, we said, okay, Keelan Cole is always being used as the number 2. The Jets haven't even really done that either. So we don't have a ton of sample to say this is specifically who Darnold's going to. So I'm kind of avoiding everybody except for Anderson.
I do want to let everyone know that we're filming this late on a Wednesday. So if something happens Wednesday night and we don't get to it on Thursday morning, that's why. Also, you can just check the description where all my rankings and the full free Pat Mayo Experience Fantasy Football 2018 Draft Kit. The links are right there at the top, so you can find that. That'll be updated over the weekend in case something changes.
Just guaranteed something's going to happen now.
Well, of course. I mean, I can't guarantee. I
think it's happened the last 2 shows.
It happens every show. Fantasy football stuff, like by the time we finish recording something, I'll check at the end to see if anything has come up. And then like 2 seconds after we stop, something is going to happen. You can't appease the time gods. Eventually something has to come out.
Randall Cobb is going to be released at like 5:30. Watch.
Oh, good God. I hope not, because that's a news item a little bit later on. But hit the description for all that stuff. Like I mentioned, all the links, all the time codes, the draft kit, and all the pods. It's all up there free on demand whenever you want it. So please go check that out along with giving the episode a like. Backfield for the Jets. What order would you rank them in? Because they just signed Charkandrick West, which gives me some pause about Bilal Powell a little bit if I wanted to use him early in the season.
Actually, that gives me more pause about Elijah McGuire coming back than anything. Bilal Powell, obviously, adding another pass catcher is going to hurt his value, but I don't think it's going to be a significant enough amount. Honestly, so far, this is the one sign that we can say their usage. We went into this thinking it was going to be Isaiah Crowell, Bilal Powell, and Bilal Powell was losing value because Elijah McGuire is very similar to Tariq Cohen. Elijah McGuire gets hurt this time. And it's like, all right, okay, Bilal Powell. And then Bilal Powell starts getting a lot of the work with the first team, even more so than Crowell. And all of a sudden we see these pivot, especially in drafts, where people are like, ooh, maybe we want Powell. And we've been doing Powell for the past 3 years. It's like, oh, we're going to be back on board again. But to your point, I think this West signing is like maybe McGuire is going to take a couple more weeks. So that's a sidebar of that. But to your point, anybody who's a decent pass catcher, and West is going to be a threat to Powell. I would have preferred if they just had signed somebody like more of like Alfred Morris, who obviously is already with a different team. I just meant somebody who can't catch the ball. So yes, I am moving Powell down a little bit. it's kind of in this coin flip situation where Isaiah Crowell and Powell are both people that I prefer to be RB4s on my bench.
Yeah, and that's really where they're being drafted right now. Like, Powell's not even being drafted in most standard leagues, which he probably shouldn't be, but I do think for PPR purposes, Powell's probably a better play than Crowell. You're not going to get the touchdowns that Crowell will probably generate, but honestly, how many touchdowns is Crowell going to have regardless?
Yeah, and I was somebody that I thought that Crowell was going to get a good amount of use for the fact that they brought him in. And Crowell is a good pass catcher. He's not like Powell's level. He's not amazing. I mean, actually, Powell's not even one of the best in the league, but all that being said, I thought Crowell was going to get more run than he has, at least so far for what the Jets. Maybe the Jets are just fooling us. Maybe they just know what they have in Crowell, and they're just trying to get some use out of Powell and just make sure he's in the mix and ready to roll for the season. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be Crowell's backfield to start the season. But that's just kind of like speculating. I don't really believe that's going to happen.
Yeah, the fake news New York Jets, don't believe them. They're just complete fake news. They're just showing you an offense which won't even exist by the time that the actual season comes around.
I tweeted that out earlier today, though, in reference to the Panthers. I said there's only two scenarios here. The Panthers are laughing at us when we laughed at them about the 25 touches a game for Christian McCaffrey, or this is the biggest poker bluff in the history of preseason, and they're just playing the game and fooling everybody.
All right, let's move to New Orleans, where Teddy Bridgewater ended up going. For dynasty purposes, how long do you think it will be? Because he's only on a one-year deal right now. Like, is he now the heir apparent to Drew Brees? Because it seems that way. And I mean, with the aggressiveness of giving up a third-round pick for him in the spot, maybe it's insurance because they think they're really close, that if anything happened to Brees, that drop-off is not as pronounced, and they could find themselves in like a Nick Foles-type situation from last year where they can still compete to win a Super Bowl should Brees go down. Or is this like, hey, Drew Brees is retiring at the end of the year, Teddy B, we're going to sign him long-term, and this is going to be our guy?
I think that's a scenario that they have in the back of their mind, is that Drew Brees might call it quits at any given point, especially if they happen to make a Super Bowl run. I actually think this is intriguing for, like you said, for dynasty purposes. I could see him staying there and signing and being the heir apparent to Drew Brees, because I know people are going to call me crazy because like what I'm about to say, but let me explain it and set it up, is that I think Bridgewater fits in a similar mold to Drew Brees. I mean, you look at Drew Brees, he's not a great downfield ball thrower. Like he has, very good accuracy, but he's not somebody who's throwing it 60 yards downfield like Josh Allen is. But I'd rather have Drew Brees every single time. Teddy Bridgewater, the one thing he struggled all the way since college is his downfield ball. And so you look at the way that he plays the game, it's actually somewhat similar to Drew Brees. And the fact that you get him to mentor Teddy Bridgewater and get him on the path to improve, because Bridgewater basically went flat in the second season of his career. Technically, you can call it a downgrade because he had the same amount of touchdowns in more games. I think if you're looking at the situation here, is given his skill set and how he fits this offense, it's actually it's an easier transition than I think you would see most quarterbacks. Like you bring in somebody like a Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is not a swap out Drew Brees and everything stays stagnant. Or stagnant's not the best word, but you understand what I'm saying. With Teddy Bridgewater, they could keep the offense very similar for how he plays.
So some more New Orleans things. In my rankings, I've adjusted them, and these aren't like high in the rankings, but on 48 preseason snaps, Cam Meredith has been held catchless. So I actually moved the guy who has been being used as a number 2 wide receiver, Traquan Smith, over him. Now, apparently Cam Meredith is going to get some run in the final preseason game. I don't especially know if that means anything or not. Maybe it just shows that he's healthy. But at this point in drafts, I would draft Smith over I'd draft Meredith.
Well, here's the thing: is I'm drafting Ginn over both of them.
So am I. I'm still drafting Ginn over both of them. But
Ginn was one of the more disrespected wide receivers this offseason because of the excitement of Cam Meredith. And we talked about it, I think, just last week, or it was the week before, whatever episode it was. And we talked about the fact that the Bears were ready. They said, you know what? Fine, go sign him. We don't care. See ya. And after seeing the talent that Cameron Meredith has, so the fact that he's catchless, the fact that he was a little bit slow in his recoveries, including this preseason, I think has to mount all those concerns. In addition to Traquan Smith, it's like, I don't really want to get too invested with the third wide receiver with the Saints. There'll be a value there, but I think the excitement kind of carried over a little too much in the fact that I always looked at him as Cameron Meredith felt better in DFS, even Ted Ginn. The people I trust are Michael Thomas and the running backs.
And I still think that Ben Watson can derive some touchdown value in this offense as well. Like with Ginn, you're thinking of the big play. With Michael Thomas, yeah, he's going to end up with more touchdowns than Ben Watson. Actually, for my fantasy team's sake, that I have more Ben Watson than I have Michael Thomas so far this season. So it would be nice if Ben Watson could be that guy. But they're both big bodies that are going to be used down by the end zone. There's enough offense to go around. And if the Saints defense isn't quite up to snuff like it was last year, and they're forced back back into more passing situations as opposed to just being up by 14 and running out the clock every single game, that there is room for all of these guys to take a mini step forward in terms of consistency in the receiving game, at least in my mind.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. So what do you have the over-under for Ben Watson touchdowns? Like 7.5?
No, I mean like 14.5. Listen, if he can get to 7, for a guy who's being undrafted that I'm drafting in the last round as like my tight end to see what happens, I think that he's familiar with this offense. He can excel. He had a really good year last season, and he's like the smartest dude in the NFL. He can figure out how to get open.
That is true. And you know what it takes to be a tight end 1? 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. Whoop-de-doo.
Yeah, and even if he ends up with 600 yards, I don't really care. At that point, Ben Watson's going to churn out a lot of these 6 for 35 games, which isn't devastating in terms of PPR. But if he can get to that 5, 6, 7 touchdown range, he's going to be, like you mentioned, he's going to be like a top 10 guy.
He'll find a way if he stays healthy, obviously.
Sure. I mean, he blew out his Achilles that one time. Other than that, he's been relatively healthy. Listen,
he's like 73 years old.
Yeah, he's 38 years old. He blew out his Achilles 2 years ago. I was using him last year. I was like, is deer antler spray still a thing? If that's still a thing, I mean, you might want to test Ben Watson. Although
I think
he's
you
probably
spray that on, and then you drink that bubble water that Russell Wilson was using.
Smart. I mean, that clears you of concussions, according to Russell Wilson. So I'm not quite sure of the science behind that. Although Ben Watson, being as smart as he is, he would probably know.
Probably explain it.
Next one. Let's go to Philly, where Carson Wentz has not been cleared for contact yet. What week do you think we see Carson Wentz? I'll say week 3.
I think it's week 2. I think that he's just close enough that I think that, if we were talking about the middle of the season and this was kind of an injury, they'd be like, you're going to go back out there because we need to win. I think because of Nick Foles, they're going to say, you know what, we'll give you the extra week. So I'm saying week 2. Week 3 wouldn't surprise me. But even if he misses the first 2 weeks, Carson Wentz is not going to fall outside of my top 10 because I can make up with the quarterback for the first 2. Plug in Alex Smith. Nobody wants Alex Smith, despite the fact he's like a QB1 fringe in that conversation, one of the safest quarterbacks every single year. So I'll plug in somebody like that, or even roll the dice on a Trubisky for the first 2 weeks, even if it is 2 weeks, because those next 14 games, if Carson Wentz is 100% and he even plays at 90% of what he did last year, he's still going to be a top 10 quarterback.
Yeah, I have him at number 7 in the rankings right now. I'm not moving that. I'm with you. I can mix and match for the first 2. Hell, if it's 4 weeks, which it won't be, at least I certainly hope not. It's still, there's no bye weeks the first 4 weeks. You can get through it. And I like the matchups he has with the NFC South this year, with the AFC South. I mean, minus the Jags and maybe the pass rush from the Texans gets to him. That's still a team that you can throw on. That I think that later on in the season, plus all the teams in the NFC East who just could be terrible, who knows, that it's a nice opportunity for Wentz, and you're still getting decent value. More so now, it's been kind of like a sinus curve so far this season. He started out really low because it looked like he was going to miss a bunch of time. Then it said he was healthy, then his stock went up, and then it's going back down now that he might miss a few weeks. This is the buying opportunity when he's on the way back down. But
would you just bust out some sign and cosign on me?
A little bit. Listen, if there's one thing I do miss from my schooling days, it's solving identities.
Okay. I remember making that giant graph that was like this big with the cosine and sine curves that overlapped each other. And yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did all my math in French growing up. So instead of finding for the slope, I had to derive for la pente. It made things much more difficult when I took English math in college. I was
that's like sexy math.
That's sexy math? Oh, French math?
Yeah.
It could be. So Alshon does look like he's going to miss some time, though. He's not practicing. At least 2 weeks is the report. I don't know how much we can trust that, but I'm preparing like he's going to be out for 2 weeks. So what does this do to Alshon's draft stock and where you would draft him this weekend? What does this do to the other guys, and how does this play out over the course of the season?
Yeah, so I'm treating this as 4 weeks because let's say 2. Let's say that's accurate. You still need at least 1 game to get into the swing of things, maybe even 2. If it's not exactly 2 weeks and ends up being 3, then it's 4. So I'm just going to, why I put that out there is because I'm going to compare him to one other player who we know he's definitively out for 4 weeks, but he's healthy, and that's Julian Edelman. So where it comes down to is now if I'm sitting in the draft and it's like, you know what, the first 4 weeks, we're talking about with quarterback, first 4 weeks with wide receiver, with Mark Ingram, with all these players. That's the easiest time to make up. That's where you find waiver wire options. That's where a lot of the guys you drafted late can hit in the beginning of the season. But if I'm looking at the board and I'm saying Julian Edelman or Alshon Jeffrey, I'm going to take the person I know suspended and 100% healthy and practicing with the team up until the point where he's not allowed to anymore. And I'm going to take Julian Edelman, who's also a wide receiver 1 when he's on the field, versus Alshon Jeffrey, who is a wide receiver fringe 1, kind of touchdown reliant. And we don't know what his health is. I mean, maybe he comes back in week 3 and it's a Doug Baldwin situation where he's not going to be 100% for the entire year. So that's where I'm considering Alshon Jeffrey. Like where I'm going to move him down to, I don't know exactly, but I'm going to tell you if both names are on the board, I'm going to feel better about Edelman at this point.
Well, I did a draft last night. It's not like an expert draft or anything like that. Friend of mine asked me to be in it. I said yes. It's like $100 to join. Seems like easy money. Alshon Jeffrey went with the second pick of the 7th round, which, I mean, is that a spot where you would start gambling on him?
Yeah, because usually if I own Edelman, I've been gambling him on that late 6th, early 7th round range. So that's kind of where, like I said, I would take Edelman right before him, but Jeffrey would be right behind. At that point of the draft, you hope that the 4 weeks and then he's back to 100%. And then if you're getting 12 games at Alshon Jeffrey, we are talking about a top 15 wide receiver.
Yeah, I moved him down in my rankings into tier 5 at receiver. Would you go Michael Crabtree or Alshon Jeffrey?
In a PPR, I'll take Crabtree.
Josh Gordon or Alshon Jeffrey?
I'll take Gordon.
Corey Davis or Alshon Jeffrey?
I lean slightly to Corey Davis.
Okay. Golden Tate in a PPR.
Oh, Tate.
Emmanuel Sanders in a PPR or Alshon Jeffrey?
Also Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah, so I'm going to keep him on tier 5. Would you go Sammy Watkins or Alshon Jeffrey?
At that point, I'd probably take the upside potential of Jeffrey.
Okay, so I'm going to drop Jeffrey down. I think that's the spot. One spot after Emmanuel Sanders, one spot before Sammy Watkins, which really does put him down to really reflect that ADP right now. That was a 12-team league. So he's going in that 65 to 90 range, depending on how people in your league feel about him. If you can get him as wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 3, I think that is an acceptable amount of upside that you can gamble on if he can come back, be healthy, and score some touchdowns. But what does this do to Nelson Aguilar? Are you moving him up?
Slightly, not a ton, because you're going to see the boost for Aguilar. I think this does more for Mike Wallace. That's the one I think it's the real boost for the first couple of weeks. Aguilar is not all of a sudden going to see 15 targets per game. I mean, you talk about Aguilar is going to move up, but Zach Ertz is going to move up as well. Heck, Dallas Goedert might get a little bit involved. If you think of the Trey Burton from last year, maybe they run a little bit more 2 tight end to start the season. But I think Mike Wallace is the main beneficiary here, where Mike Wallace is somebody I'm definitely looking at for DFS purposes at the beginning of the season, especially if we get a situation where Carson Wentz is out there for the second game and Mike Wallace is out there and we still have no Alshon Jeffrey. That's the kind of things I'm looking at here. So Mike Wallace is basically undrafted across the board, even in 16 team, he's just, nobody wants him. And I think that's somebody you could actually plug in a deeper league.
In a deeper league, sure, but I think you're now talking about a very deep 14 person league where it's 3 receivers and a flex of 16-team league. I think he's better served just to use on DraftKings if that's the spot you want to take. Goddard is the interesting one, though, because if you've sort of whiffed on tight end or waited till the very end, reports are coming out that there's going to be 2 tight end sets being played with Ertz and Goddard. And you mentioned that Trey Burton role, and you mentioned what it takes for a tight end to be a tight end 1. As long as Alshon is out and he can play 60 to 65% of the snaps, you almost have to assume he's going to be in the red zone package that maybe, again, he's not the best for season-long leagues unless you really needed a plug-and-play for the first 2 weeks, or you want to get some hot momentum week 1 for a Thursday night game. But showdown DraftKings contest, he's $2,600 in that week 1. I'm playing him. So I think this is where we start to need to look to Goddard. I don't think he takes anything away from Ertz, but he could be a benefactor of just Alshon being out and being another big body on the field.
Oh, 100%. And if you're thinking about paying up for Ertz, this just makes it even better, in my opinion.
No, agreed. And you get Ertz to establish himself early and maybe continue seeing the same market share even when Alshon comes back, because it's not like we were banking on Ertz to score 12 touchdowns.
No, he's always been better in PPR anyway. So especially with the scoring and DFS purposes, we could be looking at one of those games that he usually puts up against the Giants where it's 11 catches for 140 yards.
Ajayi hasn't practiced in a while, with a lower body injury. And this, I didn't even see notifications on this. I saw no reports on it. Then I saw it crop up over the weekend. Now it's hey, Ajayi status in doubt week 1. I already didn't like Ajayi, but this could serve to be just a death knell in his overall upside if he doesn't, let's say, play week 1 or he's limited for the first few weeks to either establish Clement or establish Sproles and really divvy up that offense. That this is not encouraging whatsoever.
No, so did you see my tweet yesterday?
No.
That's the exact thing I said. I don't get the love around Ajayi. Let's talk about Ajayi, the player. Bone on bone to start. And he's always had bone on bone. Well, to say that he's always had it and that's not a concern is like probably the dumbest counter argument I've ever heard for an injury potential. But in any case, bone on bone. If you watched last year, especially in the playoffs, he didn't look like he had a little bit of a hitch in his run. And now, as you just said, he's been banged up and hurt and missing time this preseason, yet he's a top 40 overall pick. That is absurd to me. And to your point, we're already talking about the fact that I didn't mention Doug Peterson loves a committee backfield. He just always has and always will. So the Ajayi love, I don't understand. Clement is very intriguing that opening night on Thursday. You talk about wanting to get ahead of everybody. That's a very intriguing play and pick, especially if you're in best ball or even a seasonal and you like waited and had maybe a tough injury already at running back or anything like that. I think that Clement was a very nice usage for that first game. And, maybe you flip him after that in your seasonal. I know a lot of people are like, oh, people know that. And well, there's trades and I see all the time where people don't know everything that we're talking about. So, in any case, it comes down to Ajayi. I don't own anywhere, and I will continue not to own him anywhere. He needs to fall into like the 6th round, 7th round for me.
Right now, I have him at the bottom of tier 6 at running back. That's behind Carlos Hyde, Peyton Barber, Jamal Williams, Dion Lewis. Like I said, I was down on Ajayi to begin with. But would you go Royce Freeman or Ajayi? Because I would go Freeman.
Oh, Royce Freeman. I have Royce Freeman in my top 20.
Would you go Tevin Coleman or Jay Ajayi?
I'd go Ajayi just because even in a timeshare, he's the lead. Tevin Coleman is the backup of his split. And granted, his split is bigger than a typical community timeshare. But, Devontae Freeman, you're waiting for the concussion. What if somehow he doesn't get one in all 16 games? Now, I know that's unlikely, but that's what you're playing with Tevin Coleman. You're hoping that something happens to Freeman.
So in terms of this draft that I did last night, I do think it's a good gauge based on how people's leagues actually work. Like it's not an experts league. It's just a bunch of people who use sort of like the system to do their draft, or they looked at it 10 minutes before. He went in the 2nd pick of the 5th round. That was 1 pick after Lamar Miller. And this was standard scoring. But right after Jay Ajayi went, Josh Gordon, Marvin Jones, Golden Tate, Brendan Cooks, Cooper Kupp, Rex Burkhead, Jimmy Graham, Deshaun Watson, Greg Olsen, Marquise Goodwin. I think I would take all of those guys except for Jimmy Graham over Jay Ajayi.
I'd say I would pretty much take everybody. Say exact same thing except for Graham, except for Watson too. Well, I would take Watson over him, but I'm just not taking a quarterback there. So that's the only thing. All the flex players are going in front of him.
Yeah, I would prefer to have Watson on my team too. I'm with you. 5th round you're starting to get into the territory. You don't need to because there are still good quarterbacks available deeper down. But objectively, I'd rather have Watson on my team than Ajayi.
Oh, absolutely. I'm looking right now, and heck, at this point, I feel better about Marshawn Lynch. I feel better. You mentioned Burkhead. Let's see who else. Peyton Barber, you mentioned. I'm with that. You know what? And I'm probably one of, if not the biggest Rashad Penny fan. I take Chris Carson over him at this point.
Hey, listen, if there's one thing I was right about this preseason, it's that Chris Carson would end up being the starter week 1. I think it's like the only thing I've been right about. Because we're going to get
week 1.
We're going to get.
I'm
Chris Carson's going to be. You're holding all the hope you want. He's a fat dude with a broken finger. Don't fucking worry
he's not
about
a fat
him.
dude with a broken finger. He let himself get out of shape while he's hurt.
What does he weigh? Like 380 pounds now? He's going to, maybe he can improve their offensive line. That'll be a big help.
He's been hanging out with Eddie Lacy too much.
He's on the Eddie Lacy all cheeseburger diet.
Yeah.
Because we're going to get to something I was wrong about when we talked last week. After this story right here, we have Jacksonville, because we weren't able to talk about the Marquise Lee injury. He's done for the season. I did do the re-ranking, so if you checked over the weekend, I had my rankings updated. I'm going D.D. Westbrook over Keelan Cole. I think that he's better. I think that Cole has his role in this offense, and that wasn't going to change. I think D.D., not Dante Moncrief, is the one who's going to end up with the highest market share of targets in this Jags offense. Now, I don't think that's the most valuable thing in the world, but in my league that I drafted last weekend, right after this news came out, I got him in the 13th round, and I felt pretty good about it.
Yeah, so I'm different than you. I go Cole, then Moncrief, then Dede. And to be honest with you, I think Cole is the lead only because this team loves him. This team is super fond. We saw the usage so far with the 2 wide sets all the way up until Marquise Lee got hurt. It was always Keelan Cole. They wanted him out there. You see the Cole, it's a very, very, very small sample, but it's 3 games with no Marquise Lee, and Cole's numbers are terrific. So I'm with the Cole. I always thought Moncrief was brought in to potentially be their like number one as like an NFL number one because he's got the size and the red zone ability and better than anybody on this team for that. The red zone ability probably only contested by DJ Chark when you look at that.
Chark attack!
Yeah, the Charknado. If you're looking for anything though here, I looked at all these guys. I don't have any of them for 1,000 yards. I don't have any of them for 6, 7, 8 touchdowns. And to be honest with you, if the two best wide receivers were D.D. Westbrook and Chark, it wouldn't shock me. Like, there's no guarantee when it comes to these wide receivers, in my opinion.
I'm with you. I don't think that you should be going out of your way to target them. If I could have one, it would be D.D. Westbrook. And if you can get him late, why not roll the dice? And I think that he'll be better from a PPR perspective than Keelan Cole will. If it's standard, it's probably Cole. I think PPR, it'll be Westbrook.
Yeah, that's fair. I see the other side of it, but again, I'm not saying that I'm 100% right and you're 100% wrong because I don't think it's going to be clear, and it might not be clear this entire season.
The thing that I was wrong about when we were talking last week when Adrian Peterson got signed to the Redskins, that I said I'd rather have Rob Kelly just because I think Peterson is washed. Now, I do think that Peterson is washed up, and I still think that Chris Thompson is the running back that you need to own in Washington. But as we talked about at the time, there is name value in just terms of a trade asset that can go along with Adrian Peterson if he has a huge week one. And it does look like Jay Gruden is very committed to just giving him the ball all the time and to no one else, and that has value.
And it does. And I say what I say a little while ago on this very show about people, well, everybody knows. Everybody's going to know you're trying to trade him after 3 games. Well, yeah, did everybody know last year when he had the 30 carries and everybody went ballistic the very next week in DFS and picking up in every single league and trying to trade for him, and Adrian Peterson could still be an RB1? Like, it's going to happen again. If Adrian Peterson starts off hot, people are going to be willing to pay for him. People are going to need running back help on their teams. There are probably some teams in your draft already a little bit thin. So all this, like, everybody knows and everybody's going to expect it is kind of, it's not cliche, but it's not true. And Adrian Peterson, I said it last week, you know this, and I'm going to continue. He's an RB4 for me because he's an RB4 because I don't know how long he's going to last being effective. Because if you, as you mentioned, if they do treat him as the Cardinals did and give him like 30 touches, we know it's coming the next week. The next week is coming with like 30 yards.
Yeah, the efficiency is going to be very, very low. It's all going to be about volume for Adrian Peterson. So in the 2 drafts that I've done over the past 7 days, one was a Sharper league and it was a PPR league, but Adrian Peterson went in the 9th round of that. That's a 8th round, sorry. That's a 14-team league. In this 12-team standard league that I did last night, he went in the 12th round, the 4th pick of the 12th round. Guys going, and this is why I kind of changed my stance after seeing him go there, because I took him, I was like, look at all these guys that just came off the board. It was like O.J. Howard, Kelvin Benjamin, Eifert, Ronald Jones, DJ Moore, Isaiah Crowell, Josh Doxson, Houston's defense. Like, I'd rather have Adrian Peterson.
So would I. And what made me think about it to look this up, I looked at the schedule to see if he had a Thursday night game or like a Monday with a quick turnaround. Here's the good news is that the first 3 weeks, and then we know he's got a bye in week 4, they're all Sunday games. And then he has the week 5 game in New Orleans on Monday night and then comes back for Carolina at home in week 6. So their Thursday night game is not till week 12. So hopefully Adrian Peterson can at least get off to a 3-week, if not longer stretch to start the season.
Seattle, Doug Baldwin, my main man, Doug Baldwin, came out and he said that all season he's never going to be better than 85% with his knee, despite the fact that Pete Carroll had said he's fine and basically 100%. So I don't know who to believe in this situation.
You never believe Pete Carroll, ever.
That this is probably a good idea. Although sometimes he's like, yeah, Russell Wilson's going to be the starter. You're like, what the hell is Russell Wilson? And then he's the starter and now they're going to the playoffs. So who knows about this stuff? He said, hey, Chris Carson looks the best. And everyone's like, you drafted Penny in the 1st round. It'll never be Chris Carson. All of a sudden it's Chris Carson. So sometimes Lion Pete is not the biggest liar that's going out of Seattle. Either way, people keep asking me because I still have Baldwin ranked inside my top 10. I'm not budging on it. Now, you need to understand the context of where Doug Baldwin was going. Where did he go in this draft that I did last night? Well, he went to me in the 4th round. He keeps dropping you like lower and lower and lower because no one wants to inherit that risk. Just because I have him ranked inside the top 10 does not mean you need to take him there. I think a great spot to take Baldwin is any time after the middle of the 3rd round. You get him to the late 3rd round, early 4th round, because that's where he is going now in 12-team leagues. You don't need to reach on him. There's a lot of risk involved. But if you can get the potential volume of Doug Doug Baldwin and what he can do in this offense and the market share that he can generate, and he stays healthy for the 16 games, he's going to produce like a top 10 receiver. Now, he has that injury risk, and you might lose your back end 3rd round, middle 4th round pick. That sucks. It'll put you behind the 8 ball, but it's well worth the risk that it will take to get him in that round, because I think that he's a back end to middle round, 2nd round talent that's going more than double that in drafts. I think that's always a worthy gamble.
I agree with you, but that's where I'm going to have him. I'm going to have him in that range, as in the back end of the teens, back with the names like behind Allen Robinson, kind of in that conversation, Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, those type of wide receivers, because of that risk, because it's not Baldwin, it's not the market shit. Like, I'm with you. I originally had him as just at the back end of a wide receiver 1, so like a spot or 2 behind you. The problem I have with you saying 80-85% is what pops into my mind is like the Julio Jones factor of like, all right, is he coming out the 3rd quarter and then coming back into the 4th because he needs some snaps off, or because his arm got banged up and it's kind of feeling numbness, or, is he missing half of this week's game? Does he come out in week 7 and he's back in week 8? Like, that's my concern with this. And I know, that it's kind of a dicey game to play, because if he does play 16 games and everything's fine, he's going to far surpass any type of value you see in even the 3rd round. Heck, so he deserves to be in the 2nd. But I need to bake that in. And for me, that's why I would have him kind of in that 3rd, 4th round range. And that's where I would take him.
I would still take him, like I said, in the middle of the 3rd round, because I don't feel the need to reach on him like I did 2 months ago when I was doing drafts. It's just not a reality anymore. You don't have to do that. Why waste the draft capital when you can take someone else and then take him? Like, I have Doug Baldwin ranked 1 spot over T.Y. Hilton in that draft I did. Because Keenan Allen kept falling. I took Keenan Allen, then Doug Baldwin. My team started Hopkins, Keenan Allen, Doug Baldwin, and then I got some sort of running back. No, I got a running back, then Doug Baldwin when I ended up finished. I was like, hey, this is not bad.
I don't even understand how you started your draft at this point.
Let me look at the results of the draft.
There's people involved.
I had the 8th pick in a 12-team league. I got Hopkins, then Keenan Allen in the 2nd round. And then I got, where am I at here?
A running back?
Yes. I got Jerick McKinnon, and then I got Doug Baldwin in the 4th.
Oh, yeah. I have no problem starting that. I'd prefer, I'd prefer more of a bell cow running back, but at that start, I'm not going to complain about it all.
Sure. I got 2 of the top 10 receivers. I got 3 of my top 10 receivers, but Allen and Hopkins are consensus top 10. I mean, even in a standard league, I'd still just rather have strength at a position. It's a 3-receiver league, and I'm running out by far the best receiving core.
Yeah, and if Doug Baldwin is fine for 16 games, like you said, you're walking away with 3 top 10 wide receivers.
So the only amendment that I made, he's going to remain 9th in my rankings, but in terms of my top 200, I dropped him down from tier 2 to tier 3. I just took Baldwin and Hilton and moved them into the Stefan Diggs tier, so they drop behind some of the running backs that I was originally taking over Baldwin. So that's the only real adjustment. In the top 200, his ranking has changed. He's below some of the running backs, but in terms of receivers, I still have him at number 9 overall, because I feel confident that even if I can get 14 games out of him, his per game production plus his replacement will be inside the top 10.
So would you say you shed a tear for Doug Baldwin?
Yes, I would.
I need some sunglasses.
Tyler, it looks like Brandon Marshall's going to be cut. Tyler Lockett just re-upped on a 3-year deal where they're paying him like $11 million a year. That seemed extreme. But does that mean that Lockett is a better pick than Jaron Brown? Because I'm not even convinced that that's true.
I would say the money tells it is, but I'm going to guarantee that? Absolutely not. But look, follow the money at this point, because they invested heavy. They have to like what they've seen so far this preseason to invest that kind of money in somebody who's always been a question of who the number 2 is, has been in past years rotated with Jermaine Kearse and Paul Richardson, and all the 3 of them kind of, this, I've said it to you many times before, is before this season, their entire history is kind of playing a wide receiver 2 by committee. They all seem to have their own formations, their own usages, and that's why we can never really trust one. Well, now it's down to Tyler Lockett. And I know Jaron Brown or not John Brown or whatever you want to call him has some big playability, has some skills of his own. But I think this tells us, at least on paper, the Seahawks believe Tyler Lockett is the definitive number 2.
They also traded with Green Bay and picked up Brett Hundley. Super. They tried to get Jacoby Brissett earlier, too. Is there something wrong with Russell Wilson?
I don't think there's anything wrong with Russell Wilson. I just think there's something wrong with who their backup quarterbacks were.
Or the fact that Russell Wilson's a guy that takes a lot of hits and they have a terrible offensive line.
Yeah, so let's find somebody who's somewhat mobile behind them. But Brett Hundley, did they not watch any of the Packers games last year?
Well, I mean, he was available. I mean, they could have went to Kaiser and traded the Packers for him.
Well, what does that tell you that the Packers would rather keep Deshaun Kaiser?
Yeah, maybe Hundley had a bit more value than Kaiser did.
Is Mike Glennon still sitting out there somewhere with the $18 million he got?
Yeah, I mean, have the Cardinals cut him yet?
I don't know. They have to. They can't be keeping all three. What's the point of keeping Glennon when you have Sam Bradford or Josh Rosen?
Josh Rosen, probably because you have Sam Bradford and he's just going to be out halfway through week 1.
You just guarantee that he's getting hurt.
Yeah, like that's just a part of his contract. I'm only playing 2 quarters this year. They're going to be highly accurate. They're going to be amazing, but it's only 2 quarters. That's all you're getting. $10 million.
If I'm not hurt by week 3, I don't care. I'm out anyway.
Yeah. Once that goes in, like he gets paid like a base of like $15 million a year. If he plays more than 3 weeks, it's like $80 million a year. That guy has made so much money. It's ridiculous.
It is.
Because I think he was the last guy. It was him or Cam? No, it was him. He was the last guy to get like the old rookie scale where he got like $110 million guaranteed.
And I think he's got more in like tens of millions that he has like complete games played.
That's awesome. All right, Cleveland, the king of hard knocks, who I do not think are going to be any good this year. Josh Gordon has returned to the team, and Hugh Jackson says he will play week 1 or could play week 1, but he's not going to start. Plus, he's already tweaked a hammy since coming back. Great.
I'm not that worried. Like, he's not going to start. Okay, so when he's out there for the second series and he plays 50, 55 snaps anyway, whatever. He's going to play. The hamstring is mildly concerning, but also that's not a surprise. He's not the first guy to sit up and not play and not practice and come back and, hey, guess what? You were pushed a little too hard and you tweaked your hamstring. It's called a tweak. It doesn't even sound like it's that one where we're got the grades level, like to know whether it's severe or mild or whatever, that type of stuff. So I wouldn't be surprised if from the sound of it, this was a tweak that he would just play through if it was the regular season. So I'm on Josh Gordon. And you know how I feel about this situation. Is Josh Gordon, I think, is a top 20 wide receiver because of the skill set, because I think Tyrod Taylor, actually the numbers back it up, is more aggressive than people think. I think the biggest factor of Josh Gordon is the hit that it creates for Jarvis Landry, because you lose 20 to 30 targets for Jarvis Landry. He's directly correlated to how many targets he sees, and that kind of drop off worries me that now we're talking about Jarvis Landry as like a fringe wide receiver 2-3 versus being that top 15 conversation. Put
it this way. It's better that Josh Gordon is tweaking his hammy than like tweaking out on something else.
That is very true. I mean, that we can make jokes and people can get pissed off at us for making the jokes, but the truth of the matter is there's a significant threat to know whether he's going to play 16 games because of his off-field issues.
Yeah, I think that's now being baked into his ADP a little bit. Actually, it is being baked into his ADP.
Pun intended?
But yeah, exactly. I mean, when I get baked into my rankings, I'm like, oh man, I might not do my rankings week 10. How is Josh Gordon going to play football? Like 16 weeks or 17 weeks of consistency is a lot to ask for a guy who's stoned out of his mind.
Yeah, that is very true.
The other news out of Cleveland, in probably the best story the NFL could ever have of someone who's been charged with something, they're really upgrading here. Michael Kendricks has been charged with insider trading.
And the team apparently knew. They just didn't think it was, what did they say, relative? Or like there was something that they knew, but they didn't think it was that bad.
Well, big shocker, the Browns franchise doesn't understand things. I'm blowing my mind over here. But at least when we're hearing these stories come out about the NFL and people getting charged with things, we're now up to like white collar crime instead of like horrible, horrible stuff.
That is true, but isn't DiPodesto, isn't he from the whole Moneyball thing from baseball? That's why he brought him over. Or did they fire him? He's gone now?
Yeah, he's gone. I think that he's gone. I think he left with Sashi.
This is how the whole thing, they overlooked it. Whatever it might be. This is a hilarious story. This is just the best Hard Knocks decision that they've ever had.
It has been one of the better Hard Knock seasons in some time.
I'd say probably since the beginning, because I never even really watched the past couple of years.
The Dolphins season when they had 7-Eleven, Hollywood Hogan, he's always open. That was a good season.
I just watch Jay Cutler get mad at his wife all the time now.
So do I. How great Very Cavallari is very debatable, but any scene that has Jay Cutler in it is just high quality TV.
He is perpetually annoyed and with a FU face.
Yeah, just he hates absolutely everything.
That's why I like him so much, because that's how I feel.
You feel a kinship with Jay Cutler now?
Yeah, I do. I feel like we get along strangely somehow.
Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers signs his extension. He's going to stay in Green Bay. Obviously, no real note there, but according to Mike Lombardi of The Ringer. He reported a few weeks ago that Randall Cobb is available. Ian Rappaport disputed that. Lombardi said today on GM Street that Randall Cobb is available, but where he's such a giant cap hit that he's probably untradeable, but he might get cut. So I'm still drafting Randall Cobb. I think he's going to be on the team week 1. However, if he's not, your boy, Equanimous St. Brown, so State Brown, as I continue every time I look at it, has ran 70% of his routes in the preseason in the slot. So if Cobb somehow does end up gone, it's St. Brown that would be the one that would step into that slot role. Maybe. Who else would it be? Would it be your main man, Jamon Brown?
Yeah. Jamon, man.
But Jamon's been playing the outside. I still think that's Geronimo Allison's spot. St. Brown seems like the logical replacement for Cobb if they choose to go that route. Or maybe it's Ty Montgomery. Who knows?
Well, what I'm going to say about that is it comes down to talent. And you know how I feel about Equanimous, EQ out there or whatever. I think the fact is they were trying to get him some ability out of the slot because that's where you're the most hidden. That's where you get the initial cushion from the defenders. That's where you face weaker coverage than what's outside for most teams. There are a few teams out there that their second best corner is actually their slot corner, but more often than not, that's the weakest corner you're facing. And again, you get that cushion, you get the built-in routes that are easier. There's a reason that Jordy Nelson gets moved there at the end of his career. Anquan Baldwin got moved there. Larry Fitzgerald's playing out of there now. There's a reason you get moved to the slot is to mask your deficiencies. And Equanimous St. Brown has deficiencies. I think they're just trying to find a way for him to be somewhat productive. When it comes down to talent, that's where I go back to Moore. I like Moore than I like him, but it's St. Brown. But the problem is Moore is more of a big downfield type of guy. So your point about playing outside, the only thing is it would be intriguing to me is if they got rid of Cobb and started using Allison out of the slot some. I know he's built to play outside, but he could be valuable out of the slot. All this I'm saying is because I don't think this necessarily means if they cut Cobb, all of a sudden EQ is a definitive winner and he's going to see a value because of it.
Okay, put it this way. If Randall Cobb is not cut and he's on the team and you're doing your draft this weekend, it's Devonta Adams, it's Randall Cobb, and Geronimo Allison, 1, 2, 3 at receiver. If Cobb isn't there, it's Adams, and then it's Allison for me.
And that's kind of nobody else for me.
Yeah, I mean, if it's one of these deep leagues, like we're actually in a slow draft right now, a best ball draft with the Action Network guys. And we've both made picks since we've been doing this show because we set up our cues properly. I just got Rex Burkhead at pick number 44 at the back end of the 3rd round. And you're coming up here with a pick, I think. Or you did. You picked...
I auto set my pick. Did all my cue get blown out?
No, you got Royce Freeman, 2 picks after me.
I love Royce Freeman there.
And Davis Maddox took Juju in between us.
Because this is 16 teams for everybody that doesn't know. So at the 14th pick of the 3rd round, I actually really love that pick to get Royce Freeman there.
It's getting dicey in that league, put it that way.
Already. Well, I mean, that's what happens when you have 16 teams. But the more intriguing, to go real quickly back to the Packers, I think you mentioned the one name that's intriguing too is Ty Montgomery. When Aaron Jones comes back, why not keep Ty Montgomery on the field and use him where he was being used when before he got moved to running back as out of the slot?
New York Giants, Beckham, re-ups. Your main man, Odell, on your favorite team, Jake. You must be fired up.
Well, no, because Odell Beckham's still face down because he still has me blocked. So I still have bad feelings for Odell Beckham. But, I don't think this does anything. This just shows that the Giants, if you're talking dynasty-wise, I think that's the only effect here is there was a conversation with the first pick in dynasty. If you're starting a brand new league, who do you take? I always lean towards wide receiver in a dynasty, and there was a conversation that people started to have with Hopkins, and then even considering moving Odell Beckham down to 3 and taking Antonio Brown just because you didn't know. But this kind of investment has to make you think that the Giants feel good about him. He's been amazing so far. He deserves the contract, despite my feelings about the blocking and all that type of stuff, because he doesn't understand sarcasm. He's an amazing player. And for his fantasy purposes, whether it's seasonal or dynasty, you have to feel good about it.
Evan Engram suffered a concussion like a week and a half ago. He's returned to limited practice. It looks like he's going to be ready for week 1. Do you think that he'll be out there? Because I do.
Yeah, I think he'll be out there. And I think to talk about the Giants real quick, though, is the fact that we talked about it last week. Just don't forget, the Cody Latimer thing doesn't really matter much. We're talking about a Shermer offense. We're talking about a lot of 2 tight end sets. So the downside where people are saying, well, Evan Engram, look at how inefficient he was last year. And now Odell Beckham is back. And so they drafted Saquon Barkley. he's in his second season. He was a freaking rookie tight end, which is one of the most difficult skill positions to translate to the NFL immediately. He can see less targets and become more efficient. There's room for him to grow as a player. So I still have Evan Engram side. I think I have him either 5th or 6th at tight end.
I have him down where I'm not too concerned about the inefficiency. I think that he can become more efficient. I just worry that the volume is going to be slashed so much based on the bulk that he saw last year that he needs to get incredibly efficient to make up some of those numbers and maybe it's better off that there's more talent back around him. He's not going to be facing top end coverage like he was at points last year when like Roger Lewis was the only other threat. But I don't like Jimmy Graham. I do have him behind Jimmy Graham because at least Jimmy Graham could score 16 touchdowns for all we know. These are two guys I have now 5 season-long teams, not mocks, not anything, 5 season-long teams. I'm staying at that point. I don't own either of them.
I just finally have my second share of Evan Engram because he was at the end of the 7th round for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just go somewhere else.
No, Jimmy Graham was already off the board, and I would take him in front of Jimmy Graham.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a coin flip for me. I keep reaching on Trey Burton now because I'm a sucker.
Well, I told you last week, I end up with Trey Burton on a lot of my teams now because I'm trying to diversify and not own a wide receiver or a running back and Trey Burton, or so the other ones. Like I'll end up with a situation where I drafted Crowder and now I don't want Jordan Reed, or, I have Corey Davis and I don't want Delaney Walker. So those type, and I've been ending up with a lot of Trey Burton as like the 7th tight end off the board because I'm taking him in front of my 8, 9, 10 tight ends.
Yeah, so I keep getting him in like the back end of the 5th if I reach for him, but he keeps falling to me in the 6th round as well, and then I am for sure going.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm usually getting him like the 7th round still.
Yeah, but I don't want to take that chance because I actively am targeting Trey Burton now that I see no reason to leave that up to chance. Like if it's a 6th round picks are usually just duds anyway. Like screw it. Like I can take a 3rd running back, a 4th receiver. I'll take Trey Burton, who I have as my number 4 tight end. So I'm just that's a spot where I feel confident in him and I'm willing to invest the draft capital to make sure that I get him. Because a good tight end, I mean, we talk about why these running backs keep getting pushed to the very top. It's because if you have an awesome running back, that's worth so much against all the other running backs. After that, having a great tight end, potentially a consistent tight end, and I think that Trey Burton in this offense can be that in Chicago. That's just hugely valuable based on the position.
Yeah. You're definitely right. And like I said last week, I wouldn't surprise me if Trey Burton finishes the 5th best tight end this season. It's a lot to ask when I still think that Allen Robinson is going to see 20+% target share. And then you have Burton and the backfield because of Tariq Cohen, where he's going to see 100 targets between him and Jordan Howard and Anthony Miller. It's just a lot to ask for Burton to see that kind of level and just his first season there and Trubisky's second season for this team.
Don't forget that Kevin White caught a touchdown in a preseason game last week. He's back, Jake.
Not with Trubisky.
Doesn't matter. Kevin White is back. Draft him in the 1st round.
If Trubisky goes down and Chase Daniel comes in, there you go. Kevin White. There you go.
The final Giants note, Barkley has been cleared for 7-on-7 drills, not full contact yet. Are you worried that he might not play week 1 or be limited?
No, I'm not worried at all. I think they're just treating him with kids' gloves, to use the cliche, because they drafted him when they did. They know the talent that he is. And to be honest with you, this is like the same as any other running back. Like, how much do we need to see Ezekiel Elliott? How much do we need to see David Johnson? How much do we need to see Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, Leonard Fournette, and all these other guys? You don't. And to be honest with you, if, the flip side is that, well, he's never played in the NFL. We say that about rookies all the time. Look at all the rookie running backs that were great last year. The flip side is like, well, he's got to fit this up. If Saquon Barkley can he not, like, put it this way, talent-wise, forget him even played at all. If Saquon Barkley cannot miss the preseason come in week 1 and be great, they missed on that pick anyway. Like, then he just doesn't have the talent and he's not going to succeed in the NFL. So I don't need preseasons for Saquon Barkley.
All right, to Miami, Devontae Parker can't catch. Now, apparently it's because of a finger injury, but maybe this is just something that's plagued him his entire career. I don't know, but he might not play week 1. Like, it's leaning towards he's not going to play week 1 because there's been no updates about this, or he's going to be extremely limited. What do you do with his draft stock? Because I moved Kenny Stills up above him, but in PPR leagues, like in my home PPR league, I grabbed Danny Amendola in the 15th round. Like, he is now viable he might be viable anyways. I mean, I like him more than I like Albert Wilson, but in terms of Danny Amendola, like, that could just be that could just be Jarvis Landry's role for Danny Amendola for the amount of games that he can stay on the field, because he's basically the Sam Bradford of wide receivers.
No, absolutely. I think Danny Amendola is a great late round flyer. And you know me, I've had Stills and been the Stills over Parker guy and joked about it. It's like, just wait and draft the better wide receiver for the Dolphins later, who I still think is the better wide receiver because he's outperformed him for the past 3 years, and stop the Devontae Parker thing. But now, similar to Sammy Watkins this year, is like I never owned Sammy Watkins, and now I'm investing a little bit in Sammy Watkins because he's going like the 7th round. And at that point, it's upside with him. Devontae Parker is falling into like the 10th, 11th, 12th round. I just got him the other day, and now I'm starting to own some shares because you're telling me 11th, 12th round, that's all upside at that point. Even if Devontae Parker only does what he did last year, that's more than worth the 11th, 12th round cost that he now has. So I understand he might miss week 1 and the finger is going to be an issue, and Amendola's looked pretty good so far, but Amendola is not a picture of health. Albert Wilson's had plenty of opportunities before, and as you know, we've been calling for that when he has one great game and okay, Albert Wilson's finally going to do it. He's actually kind of similar to Devontae Parker. It's like, oh, it's finally going to happen. But you're going to tell me I can wait on Devontae Parker and get him the 11th, 12th round? I'm going to start owning Devontae Parker.
Back to that draft that I did last night. Kenny Stills went with the 6th pick of the 9th round.
Still too late.
And this, I agree on that because he went to me. That's where he fell to. Devontae Parker went with the 2nd pick of the 13th round.
There you go.
So
at that point, why not?
I agree with you. So other receivers that went ahead of him in this draft, and this is standard again where Parker might actually have more value. Amendola went 2 picks ahead of him, and in a standard league, I'd still rather take Parker. That only makes sense.
Yes.
Keelan Cole, Anthony Miller, Kelvin Benjamin, Tyler Lockett, DJ Moore, Kenny Golladay, Michael Gallup, Josh Doxson. Like, it's a lot of guys to be going ahead of Devontae Parker.
So I would, you know how I feel about Cole, so I would take Cole in front of him. Who was the one right after Cole that you mentioned? Because there was only 2 names that I would still take in front of him.
Golladay?
No.
I'd take Golladay ahead of him. Anthony Miller?
Anthony Miller. I'd probably take. That's a kind of toss up for me, but that's most of those names. I'm taking Parker in front of them.
Okay. Finally, before we get into like rapid fire injuries, some handcuffs and defenses here, Le'Veon Bell has denied a report that he'll be joining the Steelers on Labor Day. Now, fun fact, you'll be joining me on Labor Day to break down the Week 1 rankings. So
fake news. I'm not coming.
You're not coming. You're killing me with this fake news. So are we concerned that Bell just doesn't show up for Week 1? Like, is that on the table, or am I starting to have like a bit of anxiety about this?
No, I'm not. I'm not concerned at all because we went through this last year. If people forgot already, it just happened last year where we had the whole, well, he's not going to show up. Oh, he is going to show up. He's not going to show up. And then, well, now we're getting to the 4th preseason game. He's still not there. And he shows up for Week 1. So I'm not concerned. There's still obviously the small threat that he can pull the whole, I don't want to play the first 6 weeks. But he is facing the free agency, even if in the back of his mind, he probably knows the same thing we're excited about, is that the Steelers are going to drive him into the little ground because they don't care about after the season, is maybe he wants to keep himself healthy. But I think on the flip side, again, he's looking for that new set the bar contract for running backs, which should have happened already for him. So I'm expecting him to be out there for Week 1.
Pick number 1 in a standard league. Do you go Zeke, Gurley, David Johnson, or Bell?
Todd Gurley.
Would you go Bell number 2?
I go Gurley, Bell, David Johnson.
In standard?
Yes.
And same as PPR?
No. Then I go Bell number 1.
Okay. Handcuff rankings. I always think this is not necessarily the most important thing. You don't need to be taking handcuffs, especially your handcuffs. I always like to target other people's handcuffs to add positive EV to my squad. So these are the rankings that I have. We can kind of talk through these. I have John Kelly, Gurley's backup, as number 1. Chris Ivory at number 2, McCoy's backup. James Conner, Spencer Ware, Chase Edmonds, and Austin Eckler. Now, I don't think that these guys are necessarily the best backup running backs in the league, but one of the big things you need to understand about handcuffs is just having the backup to whoever your running back is great and all, but are they going to step into that same role as the lead dog has if the lead dog gets hurt? And you can't say that with everyone. Like, we saw the situation in Arizona last season when DJ went down and they're like, we had no idea who was going to end up replacing him. Some weeks it was Peterson. Some weeks it was Kerwin Williams. DJ Foster got some run. Also, DJ Foster out for the year now. But it seems like Chase Edmonds to me is in that situation. And I think that John Kelly really has passed Malcolm Brown, that if Gurley went out, it'd be like an 80% snap share for Kelly.
It is, and I actually still think the same thing about Chase Edmonds. You know this, when we did the draft, and I said during the draft that as soon as they drafted him, if anything were to freak, and it's a freak injury, that's why I'm not overly concerned about David Johnson. The wrist injury was like, you can't predict that. At least it's not multiple knees or multiple ankles like Leonard Fournette. is that Chase Edmonds, if anything were to happen, David Johnson, he would immediately be an RB2. And it wouldn't surprise me if he's knocking inside that top 15, 18 range. I believe that much in Chase Edmonds. I go a little bit different. Obviously, if you're just talking about pure handcuffs, Austin Eckler, you're right about, because he's not going to step into the Melvin Gordon role 100%. But I would start with Austin Eckler because I think he has some deeper PPR standalone value. That's why I would actually have him first.
Yeah, okay. So Eckler could play almost like when we used to play those flex leagues like 3-4 years ago, like the same value that like Chris Thompson had back then, that he can find himself into like 5 to 7 carries a game, and he might end up like some weeks with like 6 catches for like 55 yards. And that does have standalone value. But I'm just talking as a pure handcuff in this situation. I don't think that he is necessarily a top 5 pure handcuff. Like the reason I have Ivory at number 2 is like Shady could be suspended. And if that happens, then Ivory's the guy.
So exactly. So, and that's why I'm with you. And I was going to bring up that similar point is if you're just talking about threat level, Ivory is probably number 1 because that's a significant threat that the NFL could just all of a sudden decide to flip the switch and be like, yep, we're suspending LaShawn McCoy. It's happening. So I would actually go Spencer Ware a little bit higher and Chase Edmonds. I would actually put Spencer Ware and Chase Edmonds both in front of James Conner, because actually in front of Chris Ivory too, because we've seen Spencer Ware before. And we know if anything were to happen to Kareem Hunt, it would be Spencer. Heck, we might see Spencer Ware in the mix because guess who? Nagy's gone. And all of a sudden we got Knucklehead over there, Andy Reid, that might screw around with Kareem Hunt again. But I would kind of flip those. I would guy Ware, Kelly, Edmonds is how I would go.
Well, the big thing about Ivory is I think that the reason, like I said, I had him so high is that he could just have this role. Like that, it's the most. He doesn't necessarily need an injury to happen.
He's had it before and has not been good at it.
Yeah, but if he is the only guy who's there, who is it? Him like Travaris Cadet?
Yeah, somebody's going to be mixed in. They'll do something. Chris Ivory, and it's the Bills. That offensive line is going to that makes the Bengals offensive line from last year look good so far.
All right, I just think he'd be a starter for you unless your team was stacked. If LaShawn McCoy didn't exist,
non-PPR flex.
I think in non-PPR, he'd be a running back too. In PPR, he'd be a flex with the potential for more because he'd see all the goal line work if they ever get near the goal line.
Exactly. They got to get there.
All right. Week 1 defenses. So this is kind of an early look into next week, and I'll have these finalized. But like at the back of drafts, I've been trying to take the Ravens as much as possible. They play the Bills week 1. That is the optimal matchup. It's hurting the Chargers a little bit because people don't want to play them against Kansas City week 1, although I think they're going to be fine. You have basically what's essentially a rookie quarterback going up against what could be the best pass rush in the league.
They've also had like 15 injuries already.
Who, the Chargers?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Bosa's probably going to play. If he plays, him and Engram are going to rattle Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes might put up like 35 points, but he'll take some sacks and throw some picks.
I'm worried about the secondary being able to contain Hill and Kelsey.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that. And it doesn't matter. I think there will be enough opportunities for turnovers and sacks that they can still be a good fantasy.
Let me just say one thing. I agree with you on the Ravens, but I'm still putting the Jaguars first. The Jaguars get Eli Manning.
I have Jacksonville too.
I know, but I think you're going a little bit too far with the matchup in the Ravens.
I always like playing the matchups with defenses.
And I guess the Jaguars in their interception-happy secondary gets interception-happy Eli Manning.
Well, he is interception-happy. He does have a full complement of weapons for maybe what could be the only time all season. And that offensive line is, I wouldn't say significantly improved, but it's a lot better than it was last season. And I don't expect the Jags to be as good this season. I just don't. It's hard to repeat yourself as that good of a defense year after year after year. Even from year to year, we rarely see it happen. I think I have them ranked number 2 for week 1, and I never end up with them in any leagues because people draft them like they're obviously the best fantasy defense, which they're probably not.
The 11th or 12th round.
But week 1, the Ravens could pitch a shutout week 1.
That's possible. Actually, I love to throw this out there. You remember from last year? We'll see if you do. You remember the last fantasy defense that finished back-to-back number 1? Still hasn't happened since.
I want to say it's like Kansas City when they had Dante Hall because they kept scoring so many return touchdowns.
Before that, even.
Was it the Ravens?
99, 2000 Steelers.
Oh, wow. Yeah, so there you go. Who was the last running back to repeat as number 1?
I'd say it's definitely been since then.
It might have been LT, maybe.
I was going to say, LaDainian Thompson, I think, was like 4 years running.
But, like, I mean, I think a better gauge of that, like, do they finish as, like, a top 3 defense kind of thing? Were they number
Steelers?
1?
I know, but that's a fun stat. Don't poo-poo on my fun stat.
I'm just saying, for projectability purposes, like, I'm just not ending up with Jacksonville. I'd rather play the week-to-week stuff. So,
right.
I go.
Now you got me looking at running backs.
Anyway, in terms of Chargers, they played the Bills week 2. So it is still worth taking them, is all I'm throwing out there. Even if whether or not you want to play them week 1, they have enough soft matchups after that, and I still think that they are usable week 1. But I go Ravens, Jacksonville, Rams against Oakland, Saints, Titans, who I think draw a really nice matchup against the Dolphins, the Bengals, the Lions, and the Broncos. Those would be my top 8 right now. That might change by the time Monday comes along, but those are the defenses that I'm like, from the top to bottom, that I'm just trying to target, because I do play week-to-week defenses, and the Ravens are the only defense that I'm really looking to target. If I wait till the very last pick of the very last round to take a defense, I end up with the Titans most of the time.
Yeah, I actually like the Broncos more than you do. I'd use the Broncos over the Titans and the Bengals. I think you're looking at a lot of potential there for turnovers and sacks.
Well, this is something we can fight about next week on the week 1 show.
We can.
And maybe
I looked it up, by the way.
Oh, what is it?
It was LaDainian Thompson in 2007 and 2006 and 2007. Right before that, he was 4th behind Sean Alexander, Larry Johnson, and Tiki freaking Barber.
I had Larry Johnson and Tiki. That Larry Johnson year was the year that Priest Holmes got hurt. And the only reason I ended up taking Larry Johnson, because he was that hand. I didn't have Priest Holmes. It was like, if Priest Holmes get hurt, Larry Johnson's going to be fucking amazing. And he got hurt like week 1, and Larry Johnson just went crazy the entire. They played against each other one game that year. Tiki and Larry Johnson, they both put up like 30 fantasy points.
I remember that. You know, Priest, that was the one before that. Priest Holmes was the one before LaDainian Thompson. There's 2003, 2002 that he was back-to-back, and actually 2001 he was 2nd. By the way, you want to take a guess who finished number 1 at running back in 2004?
2004. Was it, who the hell was the guy on the Vikings? Robert Smith.
No. We just mentioned him too.
Tiki Barber.
It was Tiki Barber.
Tiki Barber was awesome.
This is the argument I had with the Hall of Fame with Terrell Davis, is Tiki Barber actually had a better 3-year peak than Terrell Davis did.
Yeah, but he didn't win 2 Super Bowls.
No, it didn't. But my point being is, if you're just talking about the player and you look at the 2 careers, Tiki Barber, and I'm not arguing for Tiki Barber being in the Hall of Fame. This is just my argument against Terrell Davis being there.
Well, we're going to get into the same situation when Rivers doesn't get into the Hall of Fame and Eli does.
I think Rivers will get in.
I mean, I think that Rivers has been better, but when you judge like what qualifies for the Hall of Fame, Eli has 2 Super Bowls.
Yeah. Well, how about if Ben and Eli both get in and Rivers doesn't from that draft class?
Well, Ben is getting in 100%.
Well, yeah,
like that's
I just meant.
Yeah, I mean, he's actually been good, where Eli's been like relatively mediocre his entire career, except for 1 really hot 4-game stretch, and then like 1 kind of lucky 4-week stretch.
Yeah, well, he had the 2 seasons of 4,400 yards and 30 touchdowns.
Yeah, which is not super impressive in this era.
It's not, but 30 touchdowns is not this common. The 4,400 yards is a little bit more common. And he was doing it. That was a couple of years ago. That was before it was becoming super common to do it. I'm not that big of an Eli Manning apologist. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but like, honestly, I think that Eli Manning's closer to Joe Flacco than he is to Phillip Rivers.
No, Joe Flacco had 1 great postseason. That is it.
And Eli,
he capitalized
and Eli had a great postseason and a half.
And that's fair. I know I'm not saying that Eli Manning is amazing, but I'm not putting Joe Flacco's stink on him. That's for sure.
All right. Maybe that was too low of a bar to put Eli on. All right. I have some rapid fire injuries. You tell me your interest or if you think this is serious whatsoever or potential impacts. All right?
All right.
All right, let's do this. Donta Foreman likely to begin the year on the PUP list. Does this mean Lamar Miller is an every down back? Because I don't think it does.
I think he's close to it. I think Alfred Blue will be mixed in, but I think Lamar Miller has been terrifically undervalued this entire preseason because of this. Now, you should just consider selling in week 4 before Donta Foreman's back.
Yeah, I actually think that like in the league that we're doing, the slow draft, the 16-man, like 20-round league, unless you take him, I'll be the one that probably ends up with Donta Foreman.
Yeah, well, I thought you were going to say Lamar Miller. I was like, no, I'm not taking Lamar Miller.
I'm pretty sure Lamar Miller is already gone, but I'll get Donta Foreman like round 14, and after week 6, I'll feel pretty good because I think that he'll end up winning that job.
No, I said that, you know that. I said last year that he was going to force a 50-50 timeshare, so I'm with you. I believe the same thing.
You got me on to James Washington. You were talking him up before he broke through in one of these preseason games. And then in our keeper league, get this, Tim Andercuss drafts James Washington in the 5th round, and then he hurts his hamstring. The 5th round!
Oh, see, that's what happened. And the curse is real, man. I'm telling you. So, like James Washington was always going to be the third wide receiver anyway. This was more the excitement that I had for him that they could find ways to use him, and that it was going to hurt Juju Smith-Schuster more than anything. And I still have Juju Smith-Schuster as a really solid wide receiver too. My entire problem, and to reiterate it again, was the people who were taking Juju Smith-Schuster as a top 15 wide receiver and in the late third round. That was my problem the entire time.
In the biggest troll move of the century, the Steelers, they traded for Ryan Switzer, didn't they?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the Patriots wanted him.
Of course they did. Eric Decker retired. So, they were like, hey, we got to find somebody else to come in.
All right, next one. Luke Wilson went down with a knee injury in the Lions week 3 preseason game. No update on him yet, but it was Hakeem Vales, someone, never heard of the guy. But anyway, he's the one who's going to be like the starting tight end for the Lions right now. I don't think that he's draftable, but if you play one of those like short slate DraftKings contests week 1 and Wilson's not back, that's your $2,500 player to put in.
Yeah, as well as Levine Toilolo. He's still hurt. Is that the problem?
Yeah.
Don't forget, they still have Michael Roberts too. This is what it's going to come down to. I'm going to say the same thing I said 2 months ago, is they're going to have 3 wide receivers inside the top 40 because Kenny Golladay is their de facto half tight end, half wide receiver at this point.
All right, Sony Michel back at practice, but remains limited. If he plays week 1, would you consider playing him?
Only as a flex running back.
Where would you draft him right now?
It's still pretty much close to where I was going to draft him in the first place, which was never, because he's not making it to the 7th round for me. And now probably 8th. I said it's the Patriots backfield. Like, I don't understand it.
Sony Michel, last pick of the 8th round in the draft I did last night.
That's fair. But you know how I feel. Full point PPR, give me all the James White.
Yeah, full point PPR, James White. I just keep ending up with Rex Burkhead everywhere too. And like even in this like best ball draft that we're doing, I'll probably just try to take Rex Burkhead and James White to try to capitalize on whoever the Patriots running back is. But objectively, I just think that Burkhead's good and you should take him.
That makes sense too. My problem is that his price got so inflated after the Sony Michel injury that he ended up in the like mid upper 5th round, and that's too much for me.
George Kittle me timbers. And his shoulder injury returned to practice this week. Is he a top 10 tight end?
No, I don't think so. Mostly because Jimmy Garoppolo has the yards, doesn't really have the touchdowns. Great rapport with Goodwin, and then we now have Pierre Garçon back and healthy. You have the backfield with Jerick McKinnon. This is like the Trey Burton, but even to a lesser degree. He's not quite Trey Burton, so I understand the excitement for him, but they still like Garrett Selleck for some reason.
Adam Thielen left Tuesday's practice with a leg injury. Do you have any concerns with that? Because reports were that it wasn't very serious. It was just precautionary.
Yeah, it sounded like all the reports said that if it was the middle of a week heading up to a game, he would be fine. So no concerns.
Marlon Mack and his hamstring has made good progress. Week 1, I doubt he plays. Would you start Christine Michael or would you start Jordan Wilkins? I would still start Wilkins because I'm not buying into this Michael's crap.
No, I would start Wilkins, but I don't want to start any of them.
If you had to draft one Colts running back in a draft this weekend, it would be Wilkins for me, although he's getting a bit pricey. I know you mentioned this a few weeks ago. It's caught up to real drafts now, though.
Yeah, I'm going to look right now. There's another draft that was in. Jordan Wilkins went in the 12th round. I think that's a fair spot for him.
Let me see where he went. I believe he went to me in this draft. He did. The PME's team. I got him in the 12th round of this draft last night.
Yeah, that's still a fair spot for him. If he starts climbing into like the 10th, 9th round range, that's a little too much.
Let's see. Andrew Luck's foot injury is going to sideline him for over a week. He should be ready for week 1. Are we starting to backpedal a little bit on Andrew Luck? I'm remaining steady. I have one spot ahead of Carson Wentz in my quarterback rankings. He's someone that I am actively targeting if he's not going too highly in drafts. So like 10th round, 11th round, if Luck's still kicking, I'm taking Luck and I'm rolling the dice because it's an easy position to recap. And he is someone that has substantial upside. But I'm not loving what I'm hearing about Andrew Luck.
No, the foot injury doesn't make you excited, but I don't think it sounds like it's a major issue. The bigger issue is what we said the entire time was the shoulder. But I'm going to go back to what I keep saying about Andrew Luck. Let's say he's only 90% of what he used to be. 90% is still 4,300 yards, is still approaching or right around 30 touchdowns. That's 90% of what Andrew Luck used to be. So if he ever got back to 100%, he's in the conversation to be the number 1 quarterback in all of fantasy football. He was in contention with Aaron Rodgers before all this happened. So even if he's never back to that, I'm fine with him as the 7th, 8th quarterback off the board. And honestly, this past week and a half of all these drafts I've been doing, I have probably like 80% ownership of Andrew Luck because, to your point, he's sliding back. I think it's weird. People started to feel better. I wonder if there's like a bell curve on his draft stock, because I feel like this past week it's starting to fall back down.
In that draft I did, he went the 11th pick of the 8th round. But
I'm taking him. He wouldn't have made it there. I would have taken him in the probably early 8th or late 7th.
Okay. Zach Martin in his knee has begun practicing. It looks like he's going to be ready for the Cowboys week 1. Travis Frederick, with that illness that he's suffering from, is not going to go on the PUP list, but it looks like he's going to miss multiple weeks. This is better, obviously, for the Cowboys offensive line, especially getting Martin back. I still always worry when a center goes down, though.
Yeah, but it sounds like I don't know because I don't cover the Cowboys, but it sounds like their backup center is pretty capable. Obviously, not to the level of Frederick, but they also look, La'el Collins returned back to practice. They still have, it looks as of today, 4/5 of their offensive line for week 1. And if that's there, yes, it is a little bit concerning with the center, but it's not enough. Even if they were missing 2 players, Zach Martin was going to be out, I still would feel fine about Ezekiel Elliott because it's still a better offensive line than you talked about earlier, the Giants or the Bengals or all those offensive lines. It's still better than that. Ezekiel Elliott's a beast.
It looks like Rico Gathers, the tight end in Dallas, is not going to end up making the 53-man roster. Blake Jarwin could end up starting for them at tight end. We've been trying to mine where these targets are going to go in the Dallas offense all preseason. Is it going to be Allen Hurns? Is it going to be Terrence Williams? Is it going to be Michael Gallup? Could it be Blake Jarwin? Because he's having not a bad preseason.
He could definitely be in the mix, but they haven't really been sold on any of them. It sounds like Jarwin's been the number 1, but they've all been in the mix. Obviously, Rico Gathers this entire time sounded like he was the odd man out, but you still have Jeff Swaim and all the rest of the options there. The other one, there's Jeff Swaim, it's Gathers, and I can't remember the third right now off the top of my head, but I'm not really investing in that. The most investment I have on this team has actually been a little bit of Allen Hurns of late because it seems nobody wants him anymore. And he's been falling back a round or 2. And then Michael Gallup, because I still, that I told you, I think at the middle of the season that Gallup was going to take over. It might be sooner with the way that things have gone so far. Like Terrence Williams has just kind of been like, hey, guess what? The team's finally given up on you too. That's a bad sign.
I was waiting. I got Allen Hurns in that draft that we were just talking about. I was waiting for one of the 2 to go because I really have no preference between them. I just kind of want one of them to try to capitalize on the upside. Gallup went with the 5th pick of the 11th round, so I took Hurns with the 8th pick of the 11th round. I think that's a decent spot for one of those guys. Could be a wide receiver 1 on his own team, making them a fringy wide receiver 3 potentially in fantasy, or at least a bye-week flex.
I took him as the 7th pick in the 11th round, so there you go.
Boom. So that's about where he's going, and we're both okay, clearly, with taking him there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the names right around him for, I don't know about yours, but Deshaun Jackson, John Ross, DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley. I'm taking Allen Hurns over all those guys.
Yeah, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, Kelvin Benjamin, Galladay, Doxson, Gallup.
I'd probably take Benjamin.
I would not take Benjamin. That just sounds like a death sentence.
Look, he's
Kelvin Benjamin reeks.
You know what? I don't even care if I'm repeating a joke because it's definitively my best joke of the preseason this year. I should have just retired with it. But he's going to see 140 targets, and I said he might accidentally see targets that weren't intended for him from Josh Allen.
He needs to go and talk to that guy Hot Hands from Little Giants and really get into what he was up to with that stick 'em on the hands. Then Calvin Benjamin, I mean, it's not going to solve a separation problem.
If you're seeing 140, you catch half at 70. That's 900 yards for him.
I don't know about Calvin Benjamin. And that 50% is high. A for him and B for Josh Allen.
No, that's 50% is doable.
I would take the under on 50% of targets caught by Kelvin Benjamin.
I would take the over.
What was Zay Jones at last year? 31%?
Oh, I think it was even worse than that, honestly. I think it might have been like 25%.
Do you see that Corey Coleman might not make the team?
Yeah, I know. Well, it's Corey Coleman. I'm surprised it's been this bad. I had concerns. If you went back and saw my stuff, I thought that he was going to get bumped off by corners that are strong. And that's exactly what's been happening. But I thought they would hide him in the slot. But he hasn't seen success. And I don't know what's going on. I'm honestly surprised it's been this bad for him.
Des Bryant has tweeted that, quote, he will play ball this year. Now, I don't know if he's talking about the CFL or the XFL or what's going on, but
he's going to go play with Johnny?
Yeah. Well, Johnny's concussed right now, so he's not playing for Les Alouettes. But I haven't even included Des in my rankings. I haven't taken him anywhere. I haven't even thought about taking him anywhere. I don't think that he plays. And if he does, I don't think he's going to be any good.
I think he plays.
For who?
I think he's waiting. I think he's waiting for his spot.
He's waiting. I don't think anyone wants him. If Brandon Marshall gets cut by the Seahawks, I think teams will start taking Brandon Marshall over Dez Bryant.
I don't know about that. Brandon Marshall was miserable last year, even before he got hurt for the game. So I could see Dez Bryant kind of flipping into a spot where somebody goes down, like, I don't know, maybe the Falcons lose Calvin Ridley. Something like, I think that's what he's waiting for. He wants to go to a contender, and he's waiting for a team to open up because he was trying to use the Browns. It didn't work, unfortunately. I don't know. I still don't know why the Colts haven't rang him up. But I think he's just waiting for his spot, which is a very small group of teams. That's the truth.
Well, if that's the case, is he ever going to carry any fantasy value then? Because the answer to that is probably no if he ends up being a third receiver on some good team.
No, I think that's what I'm saying. Where he's looking to be a number 2 on a contending team. So you're talking about a handful of teams.
Yeah, what you're talking about is a recipe for Dez Bryant not playing football this year.
Exactly. So I think the odds of him playing are actually less than his odds of being. This is going to sound stupid to say because you can't really have one without the other. But I'm telling you, like, if you told me odds on him being fantasy relevant, I think he's more likely to be fantasy relevant than he is to play on a team, because if he picks the team, I think it's going to be a situation where there's going to be production for him.
I don't. I just don't think that's going to be the case. And I think that his skill set has declined, and he's not it
hasn't declined that much. He can still win 50-50 balls.
Maybe he has no separation. He can't get away from anyone, and now he hasn't been to training camp. Don't draft Dez Bryant.
I wasn't saying to draft him. Actually, in a league where I drafted a month ago, I just dropped him for Dante Moncrief.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Will Fuller and his hamstring is expected to return to the Texans for the season opener week 1 against the Patriots. A nice spot there. Jay Gruden confirmed Monday that Jordan Reed is, quote, on pace to play week 1. Do you know what the injury listed next to Jordan Reed was? Because I didn't even realize this, but this is new to me, and I thought it was very funny.
Wait, he actually has an injury?
Yeah.
I thought he was fine.
No, there was an injury next to him of why he's been sitting out.
Hangnail?
Toes, plural.
Are they the toes where they got the bones removed?
I guess. It's always something new with Jordan Reed.
I feel like his foot is just going to be like that. Like it's going to be like Zoidberg just flopping around.
No, he's going to be like someone in the Civil War. He's going to end up with gangrene and have to get his leg cut off.
He's going to be a pirate running down the field.
But he'll play, though, twice a year, and he'll be great. DJ Foster, like I mentioned, suffered a torn ACL and MCL. Rough news for DJ Foster. That was in the week 3 of the preseason, so he is going to be out for the year, unsurprisingly, for the Cardinals. Better news for Chase Edmonds in that backfield. Not that DJ Foster was ever going to be someone to come in and take away full-time snaps, but if it gets to a point where David Johnson is out and DJ Foster isn't there, Chase Edmonds does have the ability to stay on the field for all 3 downs, where I think that if Foster was around, that he would be the receiving back, because that's really the only thing that he does.
Yeah, I agree with you. And you know how I feel about Chase Edmonds, so we made that clear.
The best. You love him.
The best in the world.
People say, he's great. I hear it all the time. One of the best.
Better than David Johnson.
Better, yeah, way better. 3 times as good. Anything final you want to add before people do their final rounds of drafts and before we speak on Monday morning?
I think we covered just about everything. I can't imagine, unless, like you said, what time is it? So it's 5:30, so we got about 10 minutes until there's some breaking news. I'm looking real quick just to make sure.
I'm going to go hit refresh. Let's see. Aaron Donald, close to an extension. Michael Johnson, the Bengals could move on from him next year. Byron Maxwell, if they release Byron
Lucas
Maxwell.
Duda got traded to the Braves.
Oh, see, here we go. Just a great recap. Now everything's going to break 20 minutes from now. It's going to suck. And we're going to look stupid. Anyway, if you want to get updated on everything, tomorrow morning when the show comes out and you're watching this, I'll have my rankings updated on DKPlaybook.com. You can find that as a part of the Pat Mayo Experience Draft Kit, which you can find on my Facebook page, pinned to the top, facebook.com/thepme plus. All those links are provided in the description of this video and the podcast. And the giveaway, don't forget, in the comments section, let me know where I can hit you up, but give the episode a like if you want to get into a draw for a free Super 7 from Gup's Corner giveaway. I recommend that you just go get a team anyway. You can have up to 3 teams, so you go pay for one, the $100, then you can get potentially a second one. You pick 7 spreads every single week, and that's all you do. It's like the Super Contest, but it's only $100, and it's 7 games instead of 5. Or tweet at me with the hashtag Super 7 won, because there might be another one coming down next week sometime. If you want to get in that draw, I'll announce the winner on Monday's show. So go check that out. Jake, anything final besides following you at AllInKid?
No, just follow me there. That's the easiest way. That's where I tweet out everything at The Athletic, everything I'm doing. I even retweet, as you know, these shows and everything I do. So that's just, I'm not trying to be like follow me, more Twitter followers, but it's just the easiest place to find everything.
I am. Follow me at the PME so I can have more Twitter followers. Deal? All right.
Good.
You can also do that on Instagram, Facebook, like I mentioned. Subscribe to the Pat Mayo Experience audio podcast on iTunes and wherever you can download podcasts, plus the video versions always available on the DraftKings YouTube page and the DK Live app. We're almost here. Week 1 starts officially on this show Monday. Jake will be back to break down all the positional rankings, and we'll get you ready for Week 1. Enjoy your drafts if you haven't done them yet. Hit the rankings. They'll be updated over the weekend every single day. And we'll do it. I'm Pat Mayo. I'll see you next time.
Pat Mayo Experience! Experience!